Okay, so when I say the name John Milton, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For most of us, it's got to be the towering figure of English literature, right? The blind poet who gave us the absolute masterpiece, Paradise Lost. And yeah, you wouldn't be wrong. But what if I told you that's only like half the story? What if, for 2 whole decades, arguably the most critical decades of his life, Milton the poet basically took a back seat? And in his place stepped Milton the radical, the pamphleteer, the revolutionary. You see, during the huge, chaotic turmoil of the English Civil War, Milton pretty much put all his literary dreams on hold. Instead, he picked up a totally different kind of weapon, his pen. And with it, he churned out more than 20 fiery prose works. And these weren't just essays, they were like intellectual grenades he just kept lobbing at the very foundations of his society. So, where does a rebellion like this even start? Well, for Milton, his first target was the biggest, most powerful institution around at the time, the Church of England. Get this, between 1641 and 1642, just in that short span, he unleashes this absolute barrage of attacks against the church leadership. And we're not talking about gentle suggestions for reform here. No way. These pamphlets with titles like Of Reformation were a full-on assault. His basic argument? The whole structure was rotten to its very core. And his approach was actually super logical. Step 1, he attacks the church hierarchy. He's basically saying the whole system of bishops is corrupt and totally authoritarian. Step 2, he calls for a return to something much simpler, like the early Christian church. And step 3, and this is absolutely key, he insisted that the Bible and only the Bible should be the ultimate authority. Not human traditions, not some fancy church structure. But Milton was just getting started. His fight wasn't going to stop at the church doors. From tearing down institutions, his radical ideas just exploded into this huge defense of individual liberty. And I mean liberty everywhere, from the halls of Parliament right down to the privacy of your own home. And this incredible quote here, it comes from probably his most famous piece of prose, Areopagitica. And it is this incredibly passionate defense of free speech, written to fight back against government censorship. His main point was simple but powerful. Truth is strong. It's strong enough to win any fight on its own. It doesn't need the government to protect it. He was convinced that truth really emerges when ideas clash. You have to let them duke it out. For Milton, allowing a totally free and open debate, even for ideas you might find, offensive or wrong, is the only way for a society to actually become virtuous and enlightened. It's pretty much the blueprint for what we now call the marketplace of ideas. And this fight for liberty, it went into the most personal space imaginable. Marriage. Okay, so at the time, the traditional view was that marriage was this unbreakable, lifelong contract, period. But then Milton comes along with his doctrine and discipline of divorce and argues for something that was, frankly, revolutionary. He said a real marriage is a union of minds and spirits, and if that spiritual connection fails, it should be dissolvable. I mean, this was all about championing real human dignity over some rigid, loveless tradition. Okay, so let's recap. We've gone from the church to the press to the home. There was really only one place left for his revolution to go, right? The throne itself. And this is where things get really intense. He's about to provide the intellectual justification to kill a king. And listen, these were not some abstract academic theories he was writing from an ivory tower. No, these were urgent, real-time justifications, written in the immediate white-hot chaos right after the English Civil War. In 1649, literally right after they executed King Charles I, Milton publishes The Tenure of Kings and Magistrates. Its whole purpose? To defend the people's right to get rid of a tyrant. Now, at the very heart of all these political arguments was a principle that would literally change the world, the consent of the governed. Milton argued so forcefully that a government's right to rule comes from the people, not from God. Power, he insisted, flows up from the citizens, not down from some king. And that logic led him to his most explosive conclusion of all. Rulers are accountable to the people they rule. So if a king becomes a tyrant, the people don't just have a right to resist them, they have a moral duty to overthrow them. I mean, you have to understand, in the 17th century, this was absolute political dynamite. So what's the legacy of all this? I mean, eventually the monarchy was restored in England. So what happened to Milton's radical, kind of unfinished revolution? Well, yeah, the monarchy came back, but the ideas that Milton championed, they never went away.
His prose literally laid out a blueprint for a totally new kind of society, one built on freedom of conscience, freedom of speech, and the fundamental idea that people have power over kings. And these weren't just some dusty 17th century arguments. They became the foundational pillars for huge events like the American and French revolutions over 100 years later.
When you boil it all down, Milton's most revolutionary act was his willingness to speak uncomfortable truths directly to power. He risked everything, his reputation, his freedom, maybe even his life, all for the sake of ideas. And that kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? His revolution was aimed at the 17th century. So what truths are we afraid to confront today?